Death Battle's 2024 season was amazing and such a we are so back moment. It was so fun to have the show return and be stronger than ever. So naturally, hype for the 2025 season in Kratos vs. Asura was massive. The two-time champion matchup runner-up was finally happening. The analysis previews were amazing, the fight looked sick, Devil Artemis confirmed script improvements, and a 6-minute animation length. There was no way they could fuck this. They fucked it up. But before we get into all the issues this episode has, let's start with a positive. That being the analyses, especially Asura's. Asura's analysis is one of the best we've gotten in recent memory. It's got great pacing, good jokes, understands his nuance, actually buffs him, gives him great characterization, and it plays Symphony 9 in E minor. It's almost perfect. But I do think it has a few weird parts to it, namely the way they directly say at the start how Asura isn't a one-dimensional character, which, while true, I mean, he isn't Kratos, it is a weird thing to say rather than just letting the analysis show he has a deeper character. It's especially weird because the analysis does a really good job at characterizing Asura. The bit where they talk about how Asura's wrath
Roll credits.
as a shield rather than a weapon is a pretty much perfect understanding of the character, but it feels weird due to that comment made at the start. Admittedly, this is a minor issue and doesn't affect the analysis much overall, hence why it is still an amazing analysis and the best part of the video. It is only downhill from here. Moving over to Kratos' analysis, it's not bad, but it's definitely not as good. This is mainly due to me not being fully sold on how they do Kratos' characterization. They say that he's changed in Norse, but not really why or how. It never really has the impact that Asura's big character moment had, and God of War has plenty of amazing scenes you can use to convey this. Not mentioning Atreus by name is definitely a contributor to this. Atreus is such a huge part of Kratos' development that not mentioning him more is actually criminal. With that said, the rest of the analysis is pretty good. Versus coverage is solid, and his Greek section is done well, even with the short time it has. Plus, I just like seeing footage of the Norse games, because I love those. So yeah, the episode is pretty good so far, but as I already said at the start, this episode isn't good, and now we get to why, because the animation is buns. But let's start by getting the good stuff out of the way, because I don't want to pretend like this fight is nothing but garbage. Firstly, Asura's Destructor form looks visually stunning. The first shot of the form gets the scale of it across so well, and it just looks awesome. On that same note, the kill by itself is also really cool. It's ruined once you put it in context, sure, but until you do that, the idea of Kratos using all of his gear to climb up to Asura and land the ability he needs is a sick ending. Secondly, Christopher Guerrero knocks it out of the park as Asura. Kratos' VA, who I don't want to risk mispronouncing, also does a pretty solid job, but Christopher absolutely steals the show with a practically one-to-one impression. Thirdly, the shot of the two pushing against each other as the temple breaks is so fucking cool. The fight peaks there. I like that they used the Dropnir Spear bunch since it's my favorite Norse weapon. This DBZ style shot looks pretty cool. Yeah, I got nothing else. With that, we move on to the negatives, which is pretty much everything else. We have a lot to cover here, so I'm just gonna go play by play through the animation. Obviously, starting with the setup, it's actually pretty hard to criticize this part. Not because its flaws aren't obvious or anything, but because I can't tell what the hell the setup is even supposed to be. So, Kratos gets a vision of Asura, he is then teleported by God knows what to Gaia, spawns in front of Mithra and kills some of the deity soldiers who are also there. Asura shows up, sees Kratos has killed the people that are in fact his enemy as well, and starts a fight. Absolutely none of this is coherent or makes any sense. Even ignoring that we have no idea how Kratos got to Gaia, why have the bit of him at his home if it wasn't going to matter at all for the setup? It's made even weirder because we know that bit was supposed to be far longer, so the scene was meant to be even more pointless. Then we have Asura with his 9 million IQ seeing Kratos kill the soldiers that he hates and immediately assume Kratos is a threat to his daughter for no apparent reason. She's completely unharmed and shows no signs of worry or fear. The storyboards actually paint a far clearer picture for what the setup originally was. Instead of an incoherent sequence of events, the setup is just Asura being racist to gods. So no matter what, he's out of character, but at least originally we could tell what happened. Off to an amazing start, aren't we? Onto them actually fighting, not too much to say here. I think most of the starting exchange is actually decent. There's a few weird parts like Asura's big pullback punch feeling really weightless, the hand-to-hand exchange after that looks really stiff, and Asura outpacing the axe callback being really poorly conveyed. But his punch after that has some really great force to it. It's unfortunately probably his most impactful hit too. Then we get the cool-ass shot with some very nice effects, might I add. Overall, it's looking pretty solid so far.
Ew! Dude! What the fuck?
I have actually no idea how this made it into the video. It looks so bad, it's hilarious. Kratos just turns into William Afton for a frame. I lied about the fight peaking before, it peaks here. Memes aside, yeah, the effect looks awful, but hey, I like that they gave the transformation a title. Feels very fitting here. Let's hope they don't only do it twice. Anyways, after Kratos smacks him away like a fly, Asura performs what's admittedly a really cool combo. I mentioned at the start how I really like this one shot, but the whole combo does a good job at conveying his speed. Does it convey his strength?
No.
No follow through, no impact, and Kratos tanks it like every other attack Asura throws. In fact, he's so unaffected by it, he starts lecturing Asura afterwards. Now, ignore for a second how this shot looks like it was ripped straight out of an ERB, but Kratos having the audacity to lecture Asura on controlling his rage is actually hilarious. Then again, Asura started the fight for zero reason, so maybe he is justified. The range section that follows is just a lot of nothing, albeit I do like the second usage of the drop near spear. Having it return to sender Asura's range attacks is a solid interaction, but everything else is either boring, looks bad, or both. One thing that really weirds me out is how Asura's energy blasts are animated, because they really don't look like how they should. The blasts aren't even blasts here, but rather more comparable to energy beams, and they spawn behind Asura, which looks really weird. The ability is supposed to be Asura punching out these energy blasts, but with how it's animated, it looks more like the beams are being summoned behind him while he punches wildly for no apparent reason. It gets worse with Mantra Asura because you can barely even see what's happening with all the effects going on. Anyways, as with every other attack, Kratos completely tanks these beams and one-shots Mantra Asura. This scene also looks really weird to me because the shot prior has Asura flying up and giving us the idea that he's super high into the air now. But then it has him only like 7 feet off the ground in the next shot. It contradicts itself and it feels very jarring because of that. Asura then gets real angry because Mithra started crying, and many people actually misunderstood this scene when first viewing it. See, Mithra isn't crying because her dad's in danger, no. She's crying because her goat is washed and is getting his ass handed to him. To give this scene its fair dues, Berserker Asura and his effects look pretty rad, and honestly I don't have too much to criticize here, so I'm gonna take the opportunity to talk about something else. The music. Now, when you see this scene, Asura ascending into the sky in a burst of light and hitting Kratos with a blast so powerful it opens a portal to a conveniently unpopulated dimension. What kind of music do you think would fit this scene? Heavy rock, a bombastic orchestra? Well, you get peaceful violin. This track fits for the first 20 to 30 seconds, but it feels like it never leaves the setup part of the song. It never picks up the pace or matches the intensity of what's happening with one exception. I think the track actually fits really well for the Destructor segment and sells the grandiose nature of it very well. But with every other scene, honestly, might as well not even have the track because it's barely noticeable. Back to the fight, we're now in the conveniently unpopulated dimension thanks to Devil Artemis, and Asura, now in his fourth form, was just visibly overpowering Kratos and slapped him with a massive explosion. Did it actually do anything?
I think we all know where this is going, so let's just skip to the end.
Yeah, Kratos gets up just fine, farts out a red aura, and one-shots the form. Absolute cinema. But hey, at least now Destructor Asura is here. I mentioned at the beginning how I genuinely really like this transformation, and it's the best looking shot at the fight. But unfortunately, looking pretty is all this form really gets to do. I'll give it some credit though, unlike Asura's other forms, this one didn't get one shot. It got two shot. To be fair, I didn't expect Destructor to do much in the episode anyways. I figured to do the Rising reference and then get beat, which, while a little underwhelming, would be fine if the reference wasn't done horribly. Let's compare them side by side. It starts off actually good. Asura's fist coming down looks great and has more impact than any hit he actually lands, which is honestly really sad. Then Kratos references Asura getting into position and pause. What is this face? I lied again about the fight peaking. This stupid smug-ass look on Kratos' face is the best thing ever. That look says I am about to no-diff this attack so hard, and boy does he. Let's look at the reference scene first. When Asura catches Ryzen's finger, we see him struggling to hold it up, being pushed into the ground as it cracks and melts from the pressure it's under. When he attacks back against it, he has to punch it multiple times and in the process breaks all of his arms but one that he uses to deliver the finishing blow. It's an amazing sequence. Now let's see how Death Battle did it. Kratos catches the fist without much effort, so much so that he holds it up with one hand, the surrounding area is completely unaffected, and he hits it once and that's it. I've been making jokes about it throughout the video, but I really can't overstate how dirty Asura is done in this fight. Not a single hit he throws in the entire fight either affects or shows visible damage to Kratos. He walks out of this fight completely unscathed and having barely tried. I understand that with Asura having so many forms, it can be tricky to have the fight feel even throughout the animation, but the problem is it never feels even once. If anything, Asura was doing better in his lower forms. Finally, we have the kill, which I already mentioned I like. It's cool conceptually and looks visually very nice. I think Kratos calling Asura a monster was really unnecessary and dumb, but I can ignore it because I really like the somber ending with Kratos looking back at Asura and seeing himself in him, before default walk cycling away. But with that, we are finally done with the fight. I was going to do a segment talking about how the storyboards are a vast improvement compared to the episode in terms of choreography. Never seen that in a Devil Artemis episode before, but I honestly just want to be done talking about this fight, so let's move on. Thankfully, Thankfully, there's a lot less to say on the post-analysis. Kratos takes it pretty easily thanks to being 100 times stronger on a low ball, but hey, at least Asura got some advantages. He used to not have any in this debate. I do also like how they go about countering the lore Kratos stuff, with the Kronos example being especially good, but it probably should have been worded as scaling rather than feats. The only thing in this post-analysis I really take issue with is the extremely forced cope that they'll do a rematch if Asura's Wrath 2 gets made, which they not only completely ripped off from Cartoon Fight Club, but also Asura's Wrath should get a remake, not a sequel. Duh. Anyways, as for the next time...
Alternate ending.
They gave him a
Alternate ending.
They had the balls!
Even ignoring how an alternate ending kind of defeats the point of Death Battle as a show, this kill just sucks ass. Asura's punch has no impact, Kratos just stands there, the button mash is boring, Kratos getting hit through the air looks hilarious, it's just a mess. Asura got done so dirty in this fight that even in the ending where he kills Kratos, he leaves zero visible damage to him. At the very least, I like Kratos seeing his daughter because it reminded me of the press circle to abandon your daughter meme, and that's peak. Anyways, actually on to the next time. This definitely won't be out before it releases, but I am begging on my hands and knees for Spawn vs. Ghost Rider to be peak. This episode has a lot to live up to, so much so that just being good likely isn't enough, but I have faith in DB to cook here. Now what score should Kratos vs. Asura get? Honestly, when I first watched the episode, I probably would have given it like a 6, but the more I rewatch it, the worse and worse it gets. I'll give it a 4 out of 10 because I at least like the analyses, but for the most part, this episode is just one big mess.